what's going on YouTube? This is Clay with Clay's AC and Auto Repair and Clay Motion here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and this is the Clay Way. If this video is helpful, please consider subscribing, but at the very least, just turn the volume down on your phone, computer, whatever. Let my videos play on through if I help you out. If you got a question for me, you can look me up on Clay's AC and Auto Repair on the Facebook Messenger. I try to answer questions for my subscribers for absolutely free if I can. So today we're working on a 2017-2016 Chevy Impala with the V6 in it. We're going to do some spark plugs. We're going to have to remove the intake, but trust me people, if I can do it, you can do it. I swear to you. It's not that hard. It's going to seem like it is, but it's not. We want to make sure you're successful in changing all six. In this situation, we don't end up replacing the spark plugs because we're taking the spark plugs out for a totally different reason. We don't need to change them. This engine's hydro-locked. But I think it's a good opportunity for me to show you how to remove the intake and actually do the spark plugs. So all you got to do is gap them, put them back in, and put it back together the same way you took it apart. Enjoy. Okay, so I didn't actually start taking this apart. Somebody else did. I took the intake off and took the spark plugs out and the coils, etc. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn our oil cap and we're going to take out whatever screws in there. I'm assuming it's a 10 millimeter, could be a 13, but whatever screw is in there, and then this will just simply pop off up here, and it actually is held on by a little bung right there and possibly one right there. So we're just going to pop it off in these spots on the other side, and you can do that with your hand. Pretty simple stuff. So we've got a couple 13 millimeter bolts that we need to remove. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then 6. Now here on the side of my intake, I think there should have been a bolt or something right there, but there was one right down here that was a 10 millimeter that I needed to remove. This cover covers the high pressure fuel pump, so it might not be necessary to remove it. Now we're going to undo the wiring looms on here. So backside of the clip, on the backside of the clip there's a little pushy that we push in with the screwdriver, and then that allows us to take that apart, or we could just pop it out of the holder where it's pressed into the intake. Taking a screwdriver, sticking in the back of here, right between the two clips where they come together. Up on our screwdriver and release our clip. Now we're going to remove the Phillips screws that hold down the air box to the air filter, and then remove the flathead screw up by the air intake to remove the hose and the mass airflow sensor. Okay, now we can take a flathead screwdriver and loosen that. Pulling up on the cam lock, we can push down on the release, pushing forward and then pulling back. Reaching over here to the other side of our intake, we can pull this hose off. Now we can quite simply pull this off of the throttle. Wiggling this around a little bit, we can pull it off the throttle and remove it out of the way. Now I'm going to pull these little tabs back just like that so I can push down on the lock. Bam. Do that 6 times, we'll be good. Now taking a 10 millimeter, we're going to remove the 3 bolts that hold on our coils. With the bolts out, now we can simply remove the coils and set them to the side. There are 2 10 millimeter screws that hold down the passover coolant hose and 1 clamp on that side that we need to remove the passover coolant hose tube. That'll get that out of the way so we can take the intake up. If necessary, you can grab this hose like this, give it a couple turns, and then you should be able to release it. Watch out, coolant may drop out, so you may want to have a catch pan ready. Now we can set that to the side, and we can also reinstall our bolt just so we don't lose it. Now we can release this lock clamp and remove the electrical connector on the intake. Okay, now we're going to release this. We're going to take these two, push them this way, and as we push them this way, we can push down on them to release the clip, and then we can pull the clip up. Now with the clip up, we should be able to simply work it a little bit back and forth to pull it out of its holder to separate the two halves. Now using a 10mm, we're going to loosen this up. This connects to our fuel line, and we're going to leave our fuel line attached to the car. Then we're going to disconnect this, and sometimes these clips don't want to come out of here, so a good rule of thumb every time you're trying to remove an electrical socket is it's best to push down, push forward towards your left right here, and then pull back on it, and that'll allow the tang to come up a little bit out of there and allow you to remove these easily. Next, right here on the back of the intake, we're going to remove the brake booster vacuum hose from the rear of the intake. Next, we're going to be removing this hose from right here on the top of the brake booster. It has this electrical connection. All we have to do is reach our two fingers behind it and pull it out. It just goes into a rubber bung right there. With mostly everything disconnected, we can start to lift our intake up to get it loose to get to the rest of our connectors that need to be taken off. Now we can pull the intake up a little bit and get it moved out of the way so we can start removing the rest of the connectors that are connected to it. Okay, so once we've got the intake moved up, we got a couple more hoses that we need to remove. We'll actually push down on this one, which should allow us to remove it. Down here below that one, there's another electrical connector that we need to remove. Now remember to push that forward and then pull it back. Now down here on the bottom, there's a little clip, and we can just take a pair of wire cutters, pliers, hopefully put it underneath there and pop it out of there. You can undo these clips to release this hose, or you can take a pair of hose pliers, put it on the back of there, and spin it around and pull it off at the same time. Now I have one more clip that I need to pull out right here. Okay, now with this loose, you should be able to turn this sideways to unlock it, and then pull up straight up on it. Because this is the last thing you take off, you could turn the intake sideways. Oh! Even though I tagged this video as changing the spark plugs, this is why I was taking the spark plugs out. There's a ton of water in the intake. This guy drove through a mud puddle. He said a little tiny one, but your intake should not be filled that much if you drove through a little mud puddle. It was more like a lake. Here on my page, there is full video of what ended up happening with this engine, but I thought I'd throw this in here for the spark plug change because it's kind of neat. Now we can start to unplug our rear coils, which will be much easier without the intake in the way. Okay, the spark plug sockets are 17mm in my case. You've made it this far, so taking the spark plugs out is really super simple. You don't need anything special, and you can get to all of the spark plugs pretty easy. So now I've got my spark plugs out. I can inspect them. As far as temperature wise, they look great because they're white. The porcelain's not all broken. The tips are still there, but we need to blow these out really well. They smell like water, gas, dirty pool water, nasty booty, and my grandma's house. She was nasty. Water. So we can reuse these plugs. We just need to make sure that the gaps are correct and that we get all the water blown out from inside them, and they should just work just fine. So no sense in paying $17 a plug for these GM plugs. At least maybe that's whatever they cost, $7, how much ever, I don't know. With our intake up out of the way, exposes our old gasket, and we need to just make sure we don't necessarily need to replace this. This is a pretty durable gasket. We just want to make sure it has these little lips on there. Okay, you might think it's necessary to put silicone on here. It is not. Just using dielectric like what you would put inside a spark plug socket or something like that is just fine. All we need to do is create a seal right here. It doesn't pass through water, or at least it's not supposed to. So if it doesn't leak, it's okay. And you can pretty much put your hands around it and fingertips and just feel the surfaces on both sides. Prior to installing that, you just want to make sure you take some, you know, some Scotch-Brite or something like that and clean this up just to make sure this surface is clean. And if you have dielectric on there, it will seal up and you do not need to replace that gasket. If it is damaged, obviously we replace. Well, I'm certain you folks can go ahead and put this thing back together now that you've been a little bit more informed. I hope the video was helpful and you'll consider subscribing, but at the very least, just turning the volume down and letting my playlist play. I greatly appreciate it. If you have a question for me and it's automotive related, you can hit me up on Clay's AC and Auto Repair on the Facebook Messenger. I'll be happy to try to answer it if I can. Sometimes I don't get them. Leaving comments down there on below is just fine. Just don't comment over somebody else's comment, because more than likely I won't see it. Remember, don't be the next of them, be the first of you, and if anyone else can do it, I promise you, you can do it too. God bless. Have the best of days.